please lead us in prayer. I know that you're good for it.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this new day, to gather in this building, to gather together as a community. Lord, so we just pray tonight, Lord, as we are working through how to govern the city with city hall and street department and those ideas. We just pray, Lord, to guide us through the presentation. We pray may we all have listening hearts and give us wisdom through this whole process in the days and weeks to come, and even tonight. We just ask for, we pray that you just your grace to be upon us with the right unity amongst us, even as we work through potential indifferences, Lord. This is a beautiful thing to work together through. So we thank you for your faithfulness, Lord. In Jesus.
Don't see an American flag. So.
There's a lot of flag on the police department. There, hold on his phone.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that impromptu save. Finance Officer Boudin, please call the roll.
Okay, Bueller, absent. Danforth, absent. Colleen,
Here.
Paulson,
Here.
Shetty,
Here.
Pepper,
Here.
Billhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum is established. The chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda with one change. We're going to add an item A, which is a fireworks permit for St. Patrick's Day for Illuminate Watertown. And so it's a special permit. It was already signed off by the fire department and all staff. So I just add that as item A. We'll get that out of the way. And then we'll go to item B, which would be is listed as item A. So motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Paulson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The first item up on the agenda is item A, which is a firework permit for Illuminate Watertown for March 17th, 2023. I guess I should speak to it.
I can speak to it too if you want.
Go ahead.
Sure. Illuminate Watertown is a local group. They have raised funds for the downtown lighting and they want to turn the lights on with a celebration on the 17th. So fire department's checked off on it with no concerns.
So I am on Illuminate Watertown. It was also the group that put on Winterfest. Kyle Lallam was also on Illuminate Watertown. It was all raised by private funds. We just thought it would be nice to have lights downtown, add a little bit of something downtown and we just want an event to kick it off so people know. So that's the testimony. Any further, actually, I need a motion to approve the firework permit. Motion made by Councilman Billhauer, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Any conversation on that, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the permit. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is a public discussion on city hall and street facility. Councilman Tupper. Yes.
Just want to make sure.
Okay, we're going to pass it off, but first, we are listening to a proposal tonight that is a long time in the making. It is not decided. It has been brought on by the process of trying to find a permanent location for the city of Watertown to run its government business. And we've been through many iterations, false starts over the years, and this is just the latest proposal that is being brought forward. Our staff has worked very hard on it. They have followed council direction, and they will walk us through the history of how we got here and some of the justifications. So that is just what we are going to be hearing about today. It is not being voted on or anything like that. That will happen at a later date. This is just so that the public has a chance to hear why staff thought this was a good idea and why the council is going to consider it with all due diligence. So that is how we got here. We're going to pass it off to our city manager, Amanda Mack, and our public works director, Heath Von Eye. They will be running the presentation. I have had a request. It is out of the ordinary. Unless there is an objection from council, a former councilwoman, Beth Manti, has asked to speak tonight, and she has a note from her parents to get out early, but she asked for some leniency, and I am inclined to show respect to Councilwoman Mantee and the service that she has provided for the city. And she has promised to be nice to all of us. So,
Thank you, Amanda, staff, mayor, council people. Thank you for indulging me with this. I have a grandson's birthday party at 6:30 at my house, so I thought I would just I want to also reassure everybody that because I'm speaking first does not mean that my opinion is any more or less important than anyone else's. I just want you to know this is my opinion. How many people here were at the rally in 2016? Okay, good. So then they'll know from which I talk. I really believe that it should be strongly looked at or considered that we maintain a downtown location for City Hall. We have talked about this for, I probably between City Hall, or excuse me, Chamber, Urban Renewal Board and City Council. We've worked very hard at our downtown, our 15-minute neighborhood where people can walk and get places in 15 minutes. We've encouraged a lot of people to live downtown here. And I just really feel that the city making additional investment in the downtown sends a very strong message as to what you do and how you feel about the downtown area. Now, I agree with Dan that we should listen with open hearts. And so I would encourage everybody to do that and let the staff give their presentation. But I really feel that it's one more thing that I know you have a lot of plate, but I want you to consider. And so I look at all the people living downtown. I look at the development downtown. I know that buildings that have been purchased are all full. And I really truly believe it's because of the vibe. It's because of the look that people feel downtown, the city's invested, all those kind of things. So I really would love it if we would consider leaving City Hall downtown in some iteration. And I recognize all the things you're all looking at, finance, financial, all those things. I do agree that you have a long road ahead of you. So with that, I would just like to say that that's where I'm standing on this. I think it would be very important to give it at least the same due diligence as some of you have already done and as you go forward. So thank you.
Councilwoman Mantee, thank you. Nobody is clapping in this tonight. Go work on. I do not allow that at any of my meetings ever.
Okay, so I'm gonna make the birthday party.
Have fun.
Bring us the leftover cake.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want cake. I would like ice cream.
How about a just really scrumptious blueberry dessert?
That works. That works.
Okay. With that, I will pass it off to our city manager, Amanda Mack, to start the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. We're going to tag team this tonight. Keith has put a lot of work into the presentation. There's a lot of information in here. So if you have questions as we're going through it, feel free to interrupt and we'll do our best to answer them. How did we get here tonight? So when I started with the city in June of 2021, I don't know, did I do that? No. Okay. Don't worry, I'm doing technology.
Pete did.
Pete did it? Okay. So I started with the city in June 2021. I walked into a number of capital projects that were slated to be completed. The ice arena, the downtown park, street maintenance facility, and a city hall renovation. We decided at that time that downtown park and the ice arena were top priorities. We needed to get them off our plate and under construction. So that left the renovation of City Hall and street maintenance facility to be, not necessarily to be determined, not paused, but just we're working on the ice arena, we're working on the downtown park. Once we've got those kind of figured out, then we'll come back to these two. In April of 2021, the council issued a sales tax revenue bond in the amount of $15 million with the following plan. $2.5 million of that was going to be used for the reconstruction of 10th Avenue North. $5 million of that was going to be used for the remodel and purchase of the Wells Fargo building. And $7.5 million of that was slated for construction of a new street maintenance facility. So we have completed the 10th Avenue North project. And that left us with, what's the math, 12.5 million, right? I don't math very well sometimes. So that's where we're at. We get through some of these bigger projects, they're off and running. And we decide we're ready to put the Wells Fargo remodel out for bid. Before we did that, you may remember we did a public meeting with the council where before putting it out to bid, we requested the council increase the budget for that renovation by $1 million. The estimates that we were getting from our architect at the time indicated that it was going to come in higher than what we had budgeted for. Council said, yep, that seems to make sense. The value for that is beneficial. So we put the project out for bid in July of 2022, and that bid came in $2.5 million over the original estimate. So we're now $3.5 million over what was initially budgeted in or planned for in 2019. Council directed us as staff to how do we get that number lower? So we worked a little bit with the contractor, went through some valued engineering, which we have a slide on all of the things to be considered to be taken out, either permanently or we can take it out and do it later. And as we were working through that, it really became clear to us that we needed to maybe just hit the pause button on this, reject the bid, because taking out all of the things that we would need to bring it within budget really harmed the integrity of the end product. There's a couple of things that we were thinking about with the end product with the City Hall facility. First and foremost, it is the city's building. It's your building. It's a place that when you walk into it, you should be proud of it. It's the heart of the city operations, but also the city is an employer. We employ just around 250 full-time people. 30 of them are housed within City Hall. We need to provide a place that is safe and healthy and is conducive for a productive work environment. And cutting out all the things that we would need to, we didn't feel would give us that end product. Council said, yep, we're going to reject that bid. Go see what's possible. Look and see what might be doable. At the same time that this conversation is happening, we're beginning design on a street maintenance facility. We purchased the land out on Highway 20 for $1.2 million, 27 acres. We need about 15 of them for street maintenance facility with the plan to sell off the remaining 10 to 12. Those numbers start coming in and we're looking at, remember the $7.5 million is what was originally budgeted. That included a land purchase. And we're looking at 15 million, 16 million, 17 million for construction of this. And none of it seemed to make sense. And, we kind of hit this weird time, all of you know this, where escalation is just, it's there. I anticipate things will level out, but they're probably not going to go back to 2020, 2021 levels that they were. So what we have before us tonight is sort of a history of where we started and how we got here today. And really, we think that there's two viable options for the council to consider as it relates to these two facility projects for the city. There is to continue to move forward with the remodel of Wells Fargo. It would have to be rebid because we did reject that bid outright. And build a standalone street facility out on Highway 20, or to consider creating a city services center where we're combining operations and space and bringing a good majority of our city operations under the same roof. It's council's decision. We're here to provide information and answer questions and give the best recommendation based on our professional experience. So with that, I don't know how to run the clicker. Let's see. All right, here we go. So take it away, Keith.
Thank you, Manager Mack, for that introductory commentary and that context on how we've gotten to where we are. We have a number of slides here tonight. We'll try to go through them as expeditiously as possible and be respectful of everybody's time. The information in here, really, I hope you find tells the story on why the staff has arrived at what to do here between these two alternate considerations for the council. So to start off, of course, everybody's familiar with the current City Hall building that's downtown. We included some of the history of that building here. I don't think anybody's necessarily arguing the necessity of a City Hall building, but if anybody were wondering why a City Hall building has come to light, these would be some of the reasons. We're working out of a building that partly was originally constructed almost 100 years ago. There was an addition to the north of it in the 1950s to make it the footprint that it is today. the city started operating out of this building in 1974. That's when it was purchased by the city from the previous owner. There's been a couple ancillary projects and things to help make it a little more user friendly for the citizens as they come and go, including some ADA improvements way back in 2008, which seems like you shouldn't be saying way back in 2008, but it was that long ago already. As Amanda mentioned, it does currently house just shy of 30 full-time employees. And we're working out of about 15,000 square feet right now between the main floor and the upper level. The basement also has 7,600 square feet of storage that's kind of dungeness storage, I'll call it.
That's a little scary.
The some of the necessities that have arrived or have surfaced over the last few years. That basement that I just mentioned, there's mold concerns down there. There's the higher concern is with the airborne mold spores, and that was proven in both those tests in 2011 and 2015. So again, it's a space that we've got stuff sitting in, but it's not a space that we go in and out of and use because of that airborne mold spore concern that we have down there. There's a security assessment done in 2023, just this year. The police chief and his team perform security assessments, I believe, on most all city facilities or have in the past, except for City Hall. And again, they found something that most of us already realized, that at any given time of the day during the regular business hours of City Hall, you could have anybody in that building, and employees and staff of the city might not even know they're there, just because of all the ways to get in and out of the facility. So there were a lot of safety concerns raised in that report on how to make our operations safer and a safer work environment for the staff at City Hall. Ongoing needs, these are just routine building things that come up, like with any building, like your house or your business. But those have all surfaced over the years recently too. Long story short, we could put a lot of money into this building and keep operating out of it, but it would take a lot of money to put into that building and keep operating out of it. So what are the other options to entertain rather than pumping the money into this? And that's get into some of our subsequent slides here. So in 2016, this is the most recent hard documentation that I could find in the city engineering records on what the city had done in the recent past related to City Hall. Note the ostracized note up at the top there. Prior to 2016, this project had been in the city's capital improvement plan for quite some time. I don't have an exact year.
2015, we started budgeting for it.
2015, okay. So in 2015, the city council at the time recognized the need and prioritized it enough to put money into the budget to start looking at what to do with the facility. So we hired RS Architects in 2016. They did some, what I would call siting alternative reviews and assessments. Where do we put a new City Hall? This site here happens to be what's known as the snow hole. It's in the downtown area off the First and Kemp. And it's where the downtown snow gets hauled by our street superintendent and his crew. And it's a valuable resource in that capacity too. Rob gets nervous every time we talk about using this for other things. So, but that was one of the sites that was considered, along with a multitude of other sites. There's the city property next to the city auditorium, across from the courthouse. There was another site or two that the mayor or Amanda had some knowledge. Anyway, the siting was considered with RS Architects, and they were leaning on and steering towards using this snow hole location. They went as far as making some architectural renditions of what a city hall could look like. They put together some floor plans, an office space accounting for all the City Hall staff needs. This also included some heated vehicle storage for the city-owned vehicles that the staff utilize, which there aren't a lot, but there's a handful for, the city engineers that run out on project sites, the building inspectors that go out and inspect. IT has some vehicles because they're running all over town to all the other city department facilities throughout the day. Had a council chambers, which is kind of cut off in the picture here. Of course, big conference room, training room, things of that nature. Moving on into 2019, that past project didn't get carried forward further. I can only speculate as to why. I wasn't here at the time, but the next hard data I have, and I was actually here at this time, was we entertained entering into a lease agreement with what's being called the Ruins Apartments. They're being built now today right next to the downtown park, the Watertown Community Foundation Plaza. And Stroh Architects is the architect for the developer. They met with the city in 2019 and they laid out some renditions, some possibilities of what this might look like. And they had a full 4-floor plan on city lease space within this blue shaded area here to accommodate the city hall needs. Again, as I mentioned, this was a lease proposal. And I think it was decided at the time that the dollars and cents just weren't maybe penciling out the way we wanted them to. So we forewent that idea and moved on to 2020. Towards the end of 2020, the knowledge of Wells Fargo becoming available due to their moving out of that, the bank moving out of that facility. The council capitalized on procuring that property and we moved forward with the design of a remodel in order to house all the city hall functions out of the Wells Fargo Bank. So we contracted with TSP. They went through a full-blown design process with us. And when I say full-blown, it was extensive. They do this preliminary work, getting to learn all the city operations, the staff, their functions, how they coordinate with each other, so that they could begin to lay out the building in a way that made sense in a functional manner, a more proficient and effective manner than what we're in right now.
I just a comment, during that design, there were numerous city staff that were involved in that conversation, but there was a standing council committee as well, and it was Councilman Bueller and Bill Hauer and Mayor Karen at the time. So they were involved in all of the design conversations from start to putting it out to bid.
Which I think brings us to the bid.
Love it.
Great segue. So after all that work, and again, that took a while and it took a few different iterations as time went on. But we finally, July of last year, got the project out for bid. And so these numbers, you'll see the grade numbers are what the cost estimates were from TSP. And the red numbers are the actual costs that we would have incurred. Those are the costs that we received in the bid that was received for the project. So right off the bat, our base bid, which is straight up just remodel of the existing building. That's what we're calling the base bid. It was projected to be about $2 million. It came in at about $3.25 million. The alternate one, that was enclosing the teller lanes, that canopy structure that's there. We thought that made sense to utilize that canopy in a way to enclose it and create some cold storage for vehicles. It wasn't going to be heated or anything, but at least enclosed. Keep the weather off of our city fleet of vehicles here at City Hall. That was projected to be $105,000. It came in about $400,000. Alternate 2 was the council chambers edition. This was one of the iterations that took a little while to shift the plan. We'd originally thought of putting the council chambers in the basement, but through our public safety folks, we analyzed that option. We thought, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to have that concentrated of a public meeting space buried in the basement of a bank like that. The ingress egress was not ideal. So it led us to adding on an addition for council chambers. And you can see it in this 3D rendition here. It was designed very nicely. It would have blended in very nicely with the existing architecture of the building. Something I was personally a little bit excited about just because it added all the more to the building that's there now. So that bid came in about $400,000 over the estimate. These are some ancillary minor things on the site that were bid alternates. Bottom line here is the overall bid was $5.8 million and our estimate going in was $3.5 million. So we were 2.4, almost $2.5 million over our budget and over our estimate at that time. Besides those construction costs we just went through on the last screen, we also have these other costs that we have to take into account. We had the site purchase for $1.3 million. Audio video equipment throughout the building. That's for the conference rooms, the offices, the council chambers. Audio video stuff that we have in these facilities doesn't come inexpensively. So we had $500,000 earmarked for that. The architecture and engineering and the testing fee right below it, that $380,000. those are hard dollars that were spent on the design, the layout, and bidding processes for the remodel. This FF&E, that's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It's best way to describe that is if you take this building, you flip it upside down and shake it, it's all the stuff that would fall out of it. That's the FF&E. So we obviously need those kinds of things in a city hall building. That was estimated to be about $640,000. Bottom line here, I was getting at, the total cost for the project was estimated at 6.3. We're now sitting at 8.6. Of this 8.6, if you recall, these are the hard numbers. These are the dollars that have went out the door. Those are spent, those are gone. So we got about 8.3 we're sitting on here, staring in the face thinking, does this project make the best sense for the community to continue to move forward with? And you got that much money that you're looking at going into it.
Do you want to touch on what was not included in the base bid?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest component, like with the Wells Fargo Bank is about 50 years old. And like with any remodel, you start to think, well, what should we do? What should we not do? I believe the construction date on that original building was 1972 or 4. It was early to mid 70s. So one of the main components that we decided not to include in the remodel was the HVAC system. It's been well maintained over the years. It became a budgetary concern really more than anything. We decided to strike that out of the base bid remodel. Making that note because, even though it is operating well, it was maintained well, it is a 50-year-old system. And so at some point, it's likely that the city will have to address that, moving forward with that project with that facility. So after the bid came in, we shared this information with council. We came up with a plan to look at the bid, and anytime a bid comes in that much higher than the engineer's estimate, we, by state statute, can negotiate the price with the contractor that bid it for us. That's exactly what we entertained. We talked about all these things and how much money we could save by pulling them out of the project. We could omit that vehicle storage, and there's $400,000. The canopy would just be left open like it is now today. The fire suppression system, that's a couple $100,000. The re-roofing, that was a significant cost, about $150,000, $150 roughly, that we could take out. As you go down this list, you'll see all these things we could have unplugged. Another one, the high dollar one, was the council chambers alternate. And we definitely could have saved money and pulled things out of this project. But it begs the question, as we look at this list and say, are these the things that we're willing and wanting to go without for our community's city hall? And I think resoundingly, well, it was the majority of council that said, nah, it's not worth cutting all this out of this building. And so we decided to formally reject these bids and not move forward with them. So that's a little bit of background on City Hall. We've got a few slides here on the street facility. This is this existing location out on Arrow Avenue. We're just off the southwest corner of the high school. I think most people know where this is at, but just to give you some context there, we're just south of the high school. The original building here in the northeast corner was built in the 1940s. So again, about the same era as the City Hall building, the original City Hall building that we're in right now. A few additions were made in the 1950s. And then in the 2000s, we built a newer shop of 3,200 square feet. And then we added the salt sand storage dome that's out there now. I have the square footages on this map for a reason. Right now, we're trying to target about 40,000 square foot of needed storage space for our vehicles and equipment for the street operations. We're operating out of 13,000. So again, this is one of those stories where it doesn't take long to look at this site, look at this facility and realize we're simply not operating to the level we could be for a community of our size at this day and age, and for the growth the community's seen over the years since we first started operating out of this facility. I don't have the number, but maybe we should have looked this up, but the number of miles of roadway we've added since we started operating out of this facility, I'm guessing that's a startling number. Needless
1970.
And the point being there is, and you can see it in this aerial, we have a lot of valuable equipment. These are several $100,000 piece of equipment that sit outside year round. They get sun faded, they're started cold in the winter when we're going out to plow. I bet tomorrow morning, Rob's crews will be out. And a lot of his equipment that he needs is plugged into hot start heaters, some of which have caused, there's almost caused fire on some of these buildings just because of the old electrical that's in them. Long story short, we could be doing a lot better, and that's been recognized over the years. This project too has been budgeted for quite some time in the annual city's capital improvement plan. So once the council decided to start putting funds towards this project, we too started to try to figure out where do we land it? Where do we build a new street facility? This map shows all these little red flags of locations that were considered for a new street maintenance facility. And we ended up landing here in the center. Actually, it's this one up here, sorry. Off of 10th Avenue and on Highway 20 there at the curve where we bought the 27 acres. This is a zoomed in view of this 27 acres. And the reason I have it split out into 15 and 12 is what we're targeting using is a southerly rectangle of 15 acres for our needs. And that's give or take a few acres. Once we get through a final design for the street facility, we want to make sure we got adequate space for future growth, for all the material storage needs and everything like that to make sure we're functioning appropriately.
What can you sell the other 12 acres for?
The other 12 acres, if we were to sell them for what we paid for them, that comes in.
Don't mean that, no.
Oh.
People, I mean, what would be the market?
Okay, so we're gonna keep some questions at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No.
she is.
No, I said they could ask.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. And is it zoned commercial currently?
It is, can't remember if that's C3 or if it's industrial. I think it's industrial. But it could,
Is there any kind of appraisal on the current value of the 12 acres?
no, just the value that we paid for it that we've got in our information.
Most of the highway stuff Nancy's running anywhere. I mean, your 212 is a little bit different, but you got North 81 and 20. I mean, all that stuff's running anywhere from $4 to $6 a square foot. I mean, they got,
You would like me to figure out into acre. But not that smart.
560 about times, but I mean, the city, the nuts and bolts of the city got.
Million bucks? Or it's about 2 million.
The city got a damn good buy of 1.3 million on it, or 1.2 million. on
But
it.
it's worth about $2 million. Okay, thanks.
On the low end,
Okay.
for sure.
That's a great point. As far as the great buy, the city hasn't gone wrong in either of these decisions with the Wells Fargo Bank at 1.3, with this site at 1.2. If all the wheels fell off everything tomorrow, I think we'd easily get that value out of those locations. So we're sitting well there as far as that's concerned. So in 2022, we bought the land. We entered into a contract last year with JLG Architects to design us a new street maintenance facility. Also, later in 2022, we brought on a construction manager at risk. What this is a project delivery method that is used on how something gets constructed or built. What we typically see is a design, bid, build method of project delivery. The CMAR, the construction manager at risk, what that does is a little bit different. Is you bring the contractor on, the guy that's gonna, the team, the crews that are gonna do all the building. You bring them on early on so that they can add some value-added engineering in the design phase. So they're the experts on know what materials are available, what might work in a situation better than another situation. So anyway, we decided this was an opportune time to do this method of project delivery, just like we did on the ice arena.
Just quickly, at one time early on, we were talking about some synergy between the county, which is across the road. Did anything come of that, or did the county pass, or anything come of that?
Yeah, I believe you could say there was a pass from the county on that. We met a few times with them, one or two of the council members.
I think it's fair to say there's a pass on shared facility space, but there's still an opportunity for some shared services with salt and sand, potentially fuel
Yep.
in the future. But they weren't interested in, adding office space or anything like that.
So we're sitting on those two options right now. We have the street facility and we have the Wells Fargo Bank remodel. These are the total anticipated costs for that street facility. They include the construction, which again is just a fraction of the overall expense. Yeah, the escalation dollars that we tuck in there as prices go up between now and when we build it, or while we're building it for that matter. Design contingencies for things that come up throughout the design phase. Construction contingencies, these are things that come up during, for change orders while the project's being built. Contractors' fees. You have soft costs that, like the FF&E that I mentioned earlier, the design fees for the architects and engineers, all the material testing and things like that. So these all add up to a total just over $30 million to carry out both these projects. These are the estimates we received from JLG and RJM. And again, I think that they're a lot better estimates that are more accurate to today's construction environment than what we were estimating 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we thought what we thought, and then, the ramifications of COVID hit us hard, and our bid environment has drastically changed this number, unfortunately, but that's the reality we're living in. So this is a hard number based on that bid that we received and the cost of the land. So again, just over $30,000. You'll see the slide again a little bit later here too. So what do we do next? Now that we have this information in hand, that's the directive that Amanda referenced earlier, where the council said, let's do what we can and think of other alternatives. This is the result of, several months worth of considerations. We worked with JLG and RJM, and we said, okay, we have the street facility project rolling with you guys. What would it look like to plug our city hall building into that project? These are simply some architectural renditions that after we talked to them a little while about it, that they came up with for us.
To note that they came up with these renditions because we knew we needed to start sharing things with the public, and visual is good. It may very well not look like this.
Yeah.
Just
Very
just an idea.
preliminary examples that it could look like. Again, where's this location at? It's still, we're talking about that location on Highway 20 that we had purchased for the street maintenance facility. This is simply representation of the yellow line are the current city limits for the city of Watertown and where that location lands. One of the reasons that location was picked for the street maintenance facility was, as you can tell, street maintenance, they have to go all the way out here and they have to go all the way over here. And so it doesn't get much better as far as a geographically centered location than on that Highway 20 site. Again, this is a breakout of what the development of this whole 27 acres could look like, us utilizing the 15 acres to the south. There's some sublots that could be subdivided up to the north that we talked about a little bit ago. This is one of the couple layouts that we landed on after working with JLG and RJM. And I'll walk through these buildings here quick. The far right side of the screen would be Highway 20, otherwise known as 10th Street. So up front, of course, we would have that building you just saw a rendition of a minute ago, what would be the city hall, the administrative building that would house all the city hall offices that we have now, on top of the street maintenance administrative offices. It's about a 21,000 square foot building. It would also house the council chambers. And then the second building is the heated vehicle storage. This is a heated shop and also some repair bays. One of the goals with this site is to accomplish a centralized fleet maintenance program for the city. One of the things we currently don't have, but each department takes their equipment and vehicles to either work on their own with their own staff or to a multitude of mechanics throughout town. So there's really no comprehensive fleet maintenance program in Watertown, which is pretty uncommon for a town this size for the amount of equipment that we're operating. So one of the goals is we'd have some repair bays in here to accomplish a centralized fleet maintenance. The tan color to the north there, that's what we call cold storage. It's simply unheated vehicle and equipment storage space. The idea being, you'd have the plows and the motor graders and the heated storage in the winter when you're using them. And you'd have the street sweepers and the mowers and tractors that we aren't using in the cold storage throughout the winter. Then you, of course, flop those through the seasons. Up in the corner here is the salt sand storage, that canopy that we would need. And there's also a wash bay here, that helps keep that equipment, that fleet of equipment, clean and well maintained. This is just another rendition of that, kind of the same thing, just, you know, a little bit reconfigured.
Is there a rendering of just the street department without the city hall building? Just to get a visual of what that.
If you could go back a slide, no, back to the further to the just the previous slide than the one, sorry.
We're not being very helpful. This one?
Yep, this one will work. So what that would look like is a chunk of this building would simply be added on to this building.
Okay.
If this were just a standalone street maintenance facility. And then the rest of the square footage that was City Hall would not be there. If that, does that help
It helps me.
visualize as good as well as I can?
There's pretty sketches, but we're good.
No, to answer, no, not right now. Where was I? Where are we going?
One more.
This one.
So this here, this is the fiscal phasing, you know, how would the city pay for this project? As we've mentioned, our estimates from 3 years ago have been blown out of the water. What does that mean? How can we cash flow this thing and what bonding, if any, is needed? So in 2023, here's all of our numbers that we have plugged in and could plug in. One of these numbers on here is this project bond to the tune of about 6 million. This is an estimated amount. It could be 5, it could be 7. We really don't know yet till we get a little bit further into the design and get some more financial information to where our finance officer and the city manager are comfortable with phoning this in at. So that's an estimate. But the rest of these numbers, we have what's left from our original street facility bond and city hall bonds that Amanda again mentioned earlier tonight that we took out some years back. We have some reserves in our 212 fund. This is the capital improvement fund that the city expends dollars to go towards capital improvements only. We could take about 2.5 million out of there under this bonding scenario, or we could take a lot more out of there. But what this does is puts this reserve into a maybe not as comfortable level of funding. So that's where that bonding option looks a little more appealing. There's some things, some chips. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I would just comment that we'll dive into the finances a little bit later, but that $6 million out of the unrestricted reserve will impact services that we are able to provide going forward.
Correct.
That will, sorry, my words aren't coming. It will impact the number of street projects and park projects that we're able to do that are funded out of that fund.
Which is another important factor on why this 6 million looks a lot more appealing than that 6 million. So that there's some chips that have to fall here that would make this accomplishable. We have to sell the existing street facility. We have to sell Wells Fargo, sell the existing city hall, sell that surplus sale barn land that we're not going to be developing on. Most of these, you know, we talked at the staff level, how big of an if is this? You know, what if we don't sell these things? What does that look like? And we kind of talked through it. We've already had one offer on Wells Fargo a year or so ago. We've had people talking to us recently about Wells Fargo. We've got a college that's chomping at the bit for the street facility site. I don't think we're gonna have any issues getting rid of that. So our level of confidence in those chips falling where they need to is pretty high in all reality. So this is the sum of money that we would have as far as the funding sources, 21.7 million, all locked and loaded, you know, with the exception of some of these transactions having to go through. The construction phasing would then correlate with the financing. So we were proposing building 1 and building 2, that's the admin building and then the heated vehicle storage, all to be budgeted out of this initial 21 million. And you see we got some cushion there. The estimate for these is 20 million. We're sitting on closer to 22. Now in 2024, we would plug building 5 in. And since these aren't going to break ground until 2024, we've now got all 3 of these buildings funded through 2024 to start seeing all 3 of them take place and take shape out there on the site. Where would the additional funding in 24 come from? That would go through our annual CIP allocations and the upcoming 2024 budget process, which will be starting here in a month or two, I'm guessing, right, Kristen? 2025, kind of the same thing, just iterations of how we plug in these last couple buildings. Again, annual CIP allocations. Bottom line is, here's our total funding. There's the total project costs for construction and all the other ancillary fees. This kind of puts a bow on those two options. The highlight up here, you'll see a city services center with all those costs associated with it. And the street facility portion of that city center is still the same 21 million as its standalone. You know, that money is that money for those space needs, excuse me. And then to add City Hall to that street facility is about 7.7 million, bringing that overall project costs with the land we paid for the street facility included up to 29 million. This bottom section is that slide we saw earlier. It's the standalone street facility with a Wells Fargo remodel. That's with the 1.3 land purchase for the Wells Fargo. That's with the 1.2 street facility money. The total here, you're looking at just over 30 million. Again, these numbers aren't, they're meant to try to tell a story and help the council make an educated decision on where dollars are going, what that might look like to put them here versus there. And here, your horse apiece, really. You have 29 million, 30 million. I mean, you're about $1 million split between the two, but in favor of the all-new option at the Highway 20 location. And so that was one of the things too, that at a staff level was very telling on, this is a pretty serious option to at least consider. Councilman?
With that number at the bottom with the 86 or whatever it is for Wells Fargo.
8.6.
What is it? It's at with after we cut out a lot of the things like.
So that was as bid.
This is as bid, everything included, all
So
in.
that's with the council chamber and
Yeah,
everything.
with the council chambers and everything else. To that point though, if we go with this option, I cited this earlier this week, we could reduce this number, this bid number, there's no doubt we could reduce it. We could take stuff out of that bid and reduce it. We could rebid it as is and maybe hopefully get a lower number. We don't know how that would turn out. It could come in higher too. But this number could be reduced. And let's say we took $2 million out of that number. You brought this down to 28 million. Now you're looking at, well, 28 for this package versus 29 for that package. And then it really becomes a community decision at the council level on what is the future of Watertown's City Hall facility and street facility look like.
We're, the 15 acres you're planning on keeping for city property, whether or not City Hall goes there or not, that acreage amount doesn't change.
Correct. It with give or take a few acres, depending on our final needs that we want to retain. So, and moving forward, if the council were to direct Amanda to direct staff and our consultants to move forward in this manner with the combined project, this is a timeline that we put forth, what that would look like. April 3rd council meeting, we would have a design contract addendum to allow JLG to go ahead and move forward with an expanded design for a joint complex. The spring of 23, whether it's April, May, maybe early June. Again, once the finance officer and the city manager are comfortable with that bond number, we would bring that bond resolution forward for council action. And then April through October, we would design. Sometime in July, we'd likely have an early bid package to do some site grading, some utility work to try to get everything prepped for a spring of 24 groundbreaking on the buildings. In the winter of 23, we would bid out the structures, and then spring of 24 through 26, like you saw in that fiscal phasing, this construction phasing would line up with that fiscal phasing, and that's how that we would progress through the construction phase. This is a chart that our finance officer put together, and I always thought it was amazing how much engineers love numbers, and then I met finance officers and realized there's people out there that love numbers more than engineers do. But Kristen did a great job at what this is it's analyzing the city's current debt. This spreadsheet here looks at these debt commitments that are coming out of the 212 capital improvement fund, the second penny fund. And so what Chris is looking at targeting here is what is our debt, percent debt to revenues. That's a big number there to look at and consider. And making sure we've got everything programmed in here that make our level of comfort high. I'm pointing out this column because this is money that we're obligated to pay on the $10 million ice arena bond. But it's also a number that is likely to diminish or go away completely every year because of the fundraising this community has done to cover that $10 million bond. But Kristen knows, bird in the hand and two in the bush is two different things. So she's conservatively budgeting here on the spreadsheet. The next spreadsheet shows what it looks like when we plug in a $5 million street and city hall bond. You'll see this year that we jumped or that we obtained 40%, which is kind of a finance officer's goal for communities. That jumps from 2029 just back 2 years to 2031. So that the story here is that $5 million debt is not crashing the system. It's not compromising the program. It's not putting us into a detrimental state of financial despair or anything like that at all. So, Councilman Billhauer.
He maybe going to get to it, but the projected sales tax revenue is using a very conservative 3% growth. We've been knocking the socks off that 10 to 12%. Not to say it's going to always be that way, but 3% is very conservative if you go back in the history of Watertown as far as growth. So, but using very conservative numbers, we're still sitting. Go ahead.
You're correct. Yes, 3%, very conservative. The number that we as staff are really asking council to take a look at is this last column. So what's available after we have paid all of our debt obligations. This is how it is currently. You go here. So what comes out of this? It's all of our street projects. It's any park and rec projects, public safety improvements come out of this. What's not included in this last column is we receive annually about $800,000 in STP funds from the state. They go directly into street repair and maintenance. So there's another. So if you're looking at 23, okay, you add another 800,000 there. We're at 5 million. This, as Heath mentioned, the 2022 C is the additional $10 million that we issued for the ice arena. In hand, we have almost 4 years worth of those payments, cash on hand. The fundraising group is working on getting that money through their group to the city. So we're at 5 million in 2023, plus we're gonna have that additional 600,000 available. It also, and you can't show it on the chart because these are accurate numbers, but when you factor that in, that 600,000, it actually drops your debt to revenue percentage pretty significantly. Councilman Billhauer did the math, not me.
It drops at 56% by about 10 or 11 percentage points. So that brings us a lot closer to our 40%.
Correct. Yeah.
That's when you take into account the additional revenues and this being covered by the fundraising.
Correct. Any questions on this? Did we do it justice? Did we say all the things that you would have said?
I'm sorry, I should have.
Okay. No, I'm good. So really, as staff, our job is just give the best information to the council for them to make an informed decision. It's not up to us to say, yes, you can do this or no, you can't. But because council has said, these projects or this one project is a priority to us, we believe that this is a proper solution to address that project. And knowing that we don't have a lot of other big facility needs, in fact, probably little to none in the near future from a city perspective.
And to clarify that point, because some of you maybe had an idea in your mind when Manager Max said that East Side Fire Station is one lingering out there. what we're emphasizing is facility needs of current infrastructure, current facilities that are in place and getting them upgraded, updated to the level that we feel they should be at, in order to continue to serve the city for another 50 years. Yes, the fire station is still hanging out there. The clubhouse at the golf course is another building, that has been brought up. But when we look at those two, it's in a little bit different bucket than the governance facilities of the in and out commerce that we perform, like the wastewater facility, the airport, the city hall, police department, the library. I think, Amanda, you said it well on the radio the other day. You know, you look at the clubhouse, the golf course, it's in a little bit different bucket because of it being a specific facility for specific users. It's not a facility that's generally serving the whole town like the street maintenance facility or city hall is.
These are just other ways of showing what was on the previous chart. So this is current. And if you're a more visual person like I am, you just kind of see when that debt starts to drop off. And this would be with the additional bond. So you see that it's not a significant change. So in summary, here are some things for the council, for the community to consider when thinking about these projects. First of all, we understand that this is a big decision. It's not one that the council or staff or the community should take lightly. It is, however, the final updating of existing city government buildings. It's forward thinking in prioritizing our obligations. We also recognize that there's several next steps that need to happen in order to make some of these things a reality. We got to sell Wells Fargo, sell the existing city hall, the sale barn land, the current street facility. We do have, the $10 million bond that's being covered through donation sponsorships, which helps our own debt repayment schedule. And we also know that we're going to have to commit future CIP dollars to see this project through to completion. We are committing this as a financial priority. Both of these projects have been on the city books for quite some time, 10+ years. So it's time to get them done in whatever capacity that is. Financial considerations, as Councilman Billhauer mentioned, we are very conservatively projecting our revenues to make sure that we feel comfortable knowing we can make those debt payments if necessary. We also recognize that economic factors could change projections, as we learned, over the last couple of years. What's on paper today may be very different tomorrow in terms of construction. But we do feel that the estimates that we have on a street facility or some type of joint facility are accurate based off today's conditions and are very conservative and probably inflated more than we typically would for a project, just to make sure we are covering all of our bases. Again, the projections are only based off of sales tax revenues. That doesn't count withstanding grants, our STP funds, or other funding revenues. A complete new city hall facility, so just the city hall portion, is $7.7 million. That requires no immediate further expenses or upgrades or improvements. It's all in. But a complete or potentially partial remodel of a facility is almost $8.7 million with known future expenses and needs. Some benefits that as staff and as we were visiting with council, yeah.
I'm not sure I followed.
Sorry.
Can you explain where the 7.7 came from?
Yep. I gotta go back, don't I? Lots of slides.
Let's do this one.
Yeah.
That's this number right here. This is the estimated cost to add the city hall space into the street facility, 7.7 million. This is the same number on that other slide, that 8.6 for that Wells Fargo remodel. Noting this includes the land costs for the remodel for the Wells Fargo site and the land costs for the street facility. This, we don't have a land cost because it's in the street facility land cost already. That's one of the things that kicks this number up quite a bit higher. you know, this is recoupable, recoverable from, sale of Wells Fargo, but that's where those two numbers come from there. And both identically outlined on that last slide.
You need me to go back? Sorry.
No, I,
Okay, all right. So here are some benefits. There may be more that we're not thinking of, and there certainly could be some disadvantages that we should talk about as well. First and foremost, all of the city hall needs are met. There's council chambers, there's parking, offices. You know, there's a benefit on some level to new construction versus remodel. You build it for what you need, not trying to fit into a space that already exists. We would have a centralized fleet maintenance program, which is housed under Public Works. Public Works is housed in City Hall, so there's some efficiencies there. We'd be consolidating services. So Public Works has 6 divisions, 3 of which are wastewater, solid waste, and the airport. All of them have their own facilities for appropriate reasons. And then the other 3 are streets, community development, and engineering. Currently, community development and engineering are housed in City Hall. And there is an incredible amount of coordination that happens between streets, community development, and engineering. So having all of them housed in one space, allowing for that collaboration and efficiency, we felt was a pretty good benefit. In general, there's department and division coordination. There's value in having your people together. Those of you that manage or work in an environment like that, there's benefits that are hard to put a dollar amount to in having people in the same space. There's natural collaboration, communication, conversations that don't occur when you're in satellite spaces. Geographically, it is centrally located in town. New service administration, we have seen a significant drop in just general foot traffic in City Hall. We did just an informal study over the last couple of weeks. We didn't count people who were coming for a scheduled meeting because we figured those people would be coming regardless of where the meeting was being held. Didn't count employees coming in because, well, they're a captive audience and they're going to go wherever they need to go to pick up their mail or paychecks or whatever. So just drop in. I don't want to get my permit online. I want to come talk to the mayor. And in the last 2 weeks, we've had 30 people in and out of the building for those kinds of purposes. You know, we're offering the way we deliver services to the community is changing dramatically. You can interact with your government largely online. Most of the traffic that we see in the building or saw before even our new permitting software was related to community development, people coming in for permits, development, things like that. And that has changed quite a bit.
To that point, what Amanda was referring to is our OpenGov software that we threw the switch on maybe a year ago. All of our permits are 100% online now, and it's really streamlined that process up in the community development and engineering offices. Not just the building permits under community development, but also the engineering permits, the grading permits, the construction permits for development, all those kind of things. They're all submitted through that OpenGov portal now. And it's really reduced the amount of foot traffic that could otherwise used to be necessary to come to City Hall.
But the financial projections, we keep our reserves whole. We keep them at an appropriate level. Should something come up, something blows up, we have the dollars to deal with that. Highway 20, it is a gateway in and out of our community, and we saw this maybe as an opportunity to help beautify that area. Right across from the zoo, a beautiful city facility, adjacent to a brand new $26 million terminal. Could be an opportunity to really help redevelop that area. Economies of scale. These, for me, as the manager of people, this is where I get really excited, which shows you I'm kind of nerdy. Instead of building 2 conference rooms, there's 1. There's a shared break room rather than different buildings with break rooms. Restrooms, all of these things that actually have a significant cost when you're building them. Utility connections, parking, access. There's also economy of scales just in the construction itself. So you have 1 mobilization. You don't have 2 crews who are on one site versus the other. materials, labor, general conditions.
If I could quick hit on that, because it is substantial. If we were to run a separate city hall construction project on another site, mobilization alone is typically about 10% of the construction costs. You know, so that could easily be, this was the mobilization bid for the city hall remodel is why I plugged this number in. So you're $350,000 plus in savings right off the bat because of the economies of scale of combining these facilities into one project. Add these up and you're already pushing another $1 million in savings in the construction efficiencies alone. So I just wanted to emphasize those because they do add up in a hurry when you're running one project versus two projects.
Future expansion capabilities. We would intend to design these buildings for future expansion if needed. We just kicked off our master park planning process, but we know that there's going to be some facility needs. We haven't clearly identified them yet for park and rec, mainly shop space. And, you know, we could, once that's identified and determine what that is, it would be easy to add that on to the heated storage, cold storage, again, gaining efficiencies. There's a lot of cross work and shared work between streets and park and rec. Our current facilities, as Heath mentioned, you know, there's equity in them. We believe that there'd be, we know we would be able to recoup at least what we have into them, if not more. And it does place those properties back on the tax rolls, especially those downtown. And then really just, you know, it's quality Watertown. It really comes down to what's the vision of the council. It's our job to implement it. And that's up to them. That's why they get paid the big bucks to make those hard decisions. So with that, that's our presentation. And we would love to try and answer any questions, engage in a dialogue. We do have several council people here who can speak and speak to it. And yeah, so Nancy.
First of all, I'd like to commend you on putting together a wonderful presentation. I mean, it's very thorough. I don't have much to say about the location. I think the powers to be can decide that. But one thing I hope you keep on the front burner is naming it a city services center. You know, City Hall is kind of an antiquated phrase. It doesn't really describe what we are. And the more department heads that we can get, at least somebody representing a department in that building, the better it is. Not only for what you said, having meetings and all the convenience of people talking back and forth, those things are all good. But when you think of new families, and we've been talking about this ever since this building was built, and it didn't happen then, and I hope this will happen now, because when new people come into town, they want to know, you know, where do I go to sign my kids up for activities? Where do I go for this? What's your ambulance services? You know, all those things. And that could all be taken care of in this one building, having a one-stop shop for all the things that Watertown has to offer. So that's one thing I hope you consider. Otherwise, thank you very much for putting this all together.
Thank you. Yeah.
I do have one thing to add to
Okay.
for my slide.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Oh, and the mayor.
And I don't have anything to really add for the presentation, except for when I found out that this was going to be proposed, I knew that if there was going to be kickback, it would be about moving it out of downtown. So I wanted to be proactive about that. We have had a meeting. I went around to as many downtown businesses that I could get to ask them to come. I think we had about 15 people there representing 10 different businesses. A few couldn't come. Blossom Shop couldn't come. Sean Dempsey couldn't come. I couldn't get a hold of him, and a few others. But we did have some that I thought would have been dead set against it. Tyler and Chad from County Fair, they were there. Angie from Gather was there. Dustin from the bike shop. Kyle from Mavericks. Different locations. And no one had a problem with moving it out of downtown. They all saw the financial benefit for the city. And 201, every single one of them would rather have us, if we were to help downtown, would rather have us address parking than worry about City Hall, was the overall sentiment of the meeting. But I also wanted to be proactive. So the one city we can compare it to would be Pierre, because several years ago, Pierre moved their City Hall out of downtown moved it to basically over by their Walmart, about as far out of downtown as you can get. So this is an email excerpted from current city mayor of Pierre, Steve Harding. So about the move, some thought we were abandoning downtown, others liked the nostalgia of the previous location. Once the decision was made, we heard nothing but positives. So, and then he listed off some of the concerns as to why they moved. It was an old building, it was block construction, it was unsafe for the people working there and unsafe for security reasons. The economy of scale, or where they didn't have necessarily the economy of scale, but they just said it made financial sense to build new. Moving City Hall out of downtown revitalized some of the areas of downtown because it brought in other businesses and also put it back on the tax rolls. And his ending sentence is, our new space is healthier, safer, more secure work environment, and I have no regrets about the move. Accessibility has not been a problem for the public. The morale of the city employees increased significantly, and the public is very proud of the new City Hall. Take it for what you want. I just wanted to reach out and find out from someone who went through it. So,
Mayor,
yeah.
oh, you made a comment yesterday as one of the quotes from one of the business
Oh,
owners.
yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to.
And actually, I do have permission to quote her in particular. I'm not going to say, I mean, and I asked Tyler and Chad if they were okay with me saying their name, and I could list off a few of the others as well who were there, but Missy Sinner was also there, and Missy gave me permission to quote her saying, as a downtown business owner, but more importantly, as a tax-paying citizen of Watertown, the best thing I want you to do is make a sound financial decision for the future of Watertown.
I'm gonna do a disclaimer, I'm not speaking for Dan, I'm speaking for me.
But I might be fun in your house tonight.
But yeah, but I moved to Watertown, I was thinking more like, you know, where am I gonna work, where am I gonna live, where am I gonna shop, buy groceries, where are my kids gonna go to school? My first thought wasn't, where's City Hall? Just putting that out there. But at the same time, I see how over the years that I have lived here since 2003, the northeast side of town has grown quite a bit as far as numbers of houses. But I agree with putting it out on Highway 20, because when I look at the pictures of the other options, either staying where you're at or, you know, or moving to the Wells Fargo, you're kind of going from one dated look to another dated look. And I mean, honestly, it almost looks more like a little awkward little spot downtown where you're kind of like, where is this little nook? But having a new building on Highway 20, that's like you said, across the street from the zoo. Like I literally, I think I've only gone to City Hall maybe once or twice my entire time of living here for building permits. Otherwise, I don't frequent there very often, but if we're looking to grow, we're looking to have more modern look that will be sustainable into the future, that's probably the way to go. You know, that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Kyle?
Does the city, like the school district, do they require a private appraisal to sell city-owned properties, like the school district has to do that?
No. We have the ability to convey property to the WDC and then they can dispose of it if it's for economic development purposes. I don't believe if we were gonna sell it outright, we'd have to go through a sealed bid process. And so we're not required to, do an appraisal. And there was an appraisal done on the Wells Fargo building in 2019, 2020.
I was pretty saying like 2020.
Say that again.
The pre-sale?
Yeah, pre-sale. So, and it did appraise for 1.45. We paid 1.3 for it. Any questions? Nancy.
Amanda, I want to thank you and Heath and whoever worked with you for all the, clearly you've done just a ton of hard work, and I can only imagine how both frustrating, but at times exciting it was. And I thank the mayor for having this meeting and for hosting it earlier this week. I didn't happen to be invited, but I have talked to several of the people, and with all due respect, 3 of the people you mentioned said very different things to me. And I think part of what happens is this, you've done this is a great selling presentation for what you're doing. And I think when people first take it, it's easy to say, oh, okay, what would be wrong with that? But I would just be cautious about assuming that because this looks good, that's really the best decision in the end. I think it would probably be a terrible statement for the city to say, you know, you folks stay there, keep up the effort, but we're leaving. Now, most of you on the council and in city government and staff, most of you were not involved in city government 10 to 15 years ago when a real push, very, very significant push began to revitalize downtown. And it was not just for the sake of the city, but it was for the sake of not just for the sake of downtown, as Randy well knows, but for the sake of the whole city. And I would dare say that most of you had probably never even been downtown.
I have. I was 15 years ago. Just so you know, I was hanging out at the harbor.
Amanda, I didn't mean, I meant you would for weeks or months at a time, people wouldn't come downtown because there was nothing to come down, almost nothing to come down for. We had made the same mistake that everybody else made in the 60s and 70s by thinking, boy, the way to go is to go out to the edge. And we were paying for that. But following a visioning process that involved dozens, or was it hundreds, Jan? I don't know, maybe hundreds of people in Vision 2020. One of the things that came out of that was a recognition that, wow, downtown needs to have a lot more focus and a lot more investment than it has had. And then led by Joe Vitek and Beth Manti and some others, there was another specific process participated in by dozens of people who put in a lot of time for the downtown charrette. And, you know, they met, they brainstormed, and among other things, they acquainted themselves with the principles of what is often referred to as strong town principles, which basically holds that the strength of a city, even a little city, and maybe even especially a little city, really depends on the vitality of its downtown. And in fact, just today I was at a Watertown Development Company meeting talking about workforce development, economic development. And one of the local bankers, very first comment he made was, boy, downtown is so important that you just, you know, you've been doing great, but you have to keep doing it. Well, what happened after the charrette and the report was the city council not only paid for it, for the process, but committed themselves philosophically to being on board. We are on board with investing in and, you know, and committing to downtown with great enthusiasm. And of course, since then, faces have changed. There's new personnel. And I just think it would be a terrible shame if those changes meant that we had somehow lost that fairly recent institutional knowledge that we gained through that process, not just the charrette, but the visioning. I strongly believe that the city should do everything it can to stay in the heart of our city. I would urge you to revisit the options for using the Wells Fargo site. Is it really too expensive? Frankly, a $1 million savings with regard to a building that presumably is going to be used for 50 or 100 years doesn't sound like a real big deal to me. And hell, I put more than $1 million in my building. And, you know, sometimes the cheapest solution is not always the best. And this might be one of those. It would have been cheaper probably for all of us to go out somewhere to the edge of town, but that would have done nothing to help revitalize downtown and in turn make Watertown a place where people want to visit and they want to move to. So I think the question is, what is the message that the city is sending with this, with this decision? And I would really take issue with the very long, bottom line on your last slide. It's representing the community, the quality of Watertown. I firmly believe that the dignity of the city hall would be far enhanced in the heart of the city with a building as impressive as Wells Fargo building is, far more than, something added on to the street department site on the highway going out of town. It seems to me that if the city is really contributing its faith in the downtown and renewing its commitment, not just for the sake of downtown, but for the whole city, it would realize that we got to make this work. We got to do everything we can to make the Wells Fargo site work. Again, because if the city won't invest in downtown, why should any of the rest of us?
Thank you. Spot on. I guess my only response is that I believe that the city is incredibly invested in downtown and the success of downtown. $2.5 million downtown park. $1.8 million given to a developer to fill a hole in the ground. Numerous TIFs for housing projects downtown. We also contribute significantly to the WDC, the Chamber, and the CVB, all of whom invest in the downtown. So
When you should have seen the alleys before they fixed.
yeah,
There's a lot
yeah,
of stuff.
but I think it's important that the message isn't that the city is not invested in downtown. Because we're all committed. I mean, I spend a good portion of my paycheck downtown every month because it's fun. And to your point, it is an awesome place. So I don't want the message coming out of these meetings to be that the city doesn't care about downtown. We're just gonna leave. As I said earlier, these are very heavy weighted decisions that we have to think through for the long term of the community, to your point. So.
And this, of course, would be a much bigger project than anything that's been done so far.
Right. Kyle.
I understand exactly where you're at, Nancy. I mean, I served on the steering committee and the implementation committee for the H2O20 deal. There was a huge push for downtown. I mean, you spoke about the charrette in 2016. I mean, you could go back that 9 years and I mean, look at all the vacant storefronts, right? And so the push for the city, like Amanda just referenced, the commitment between the city themselves, Watertown Development Company was instrumental in filling a lot of those vacant storefronts by offering reasonable lease agreements to people that otherwise couldn't move their buildings there, right? The downtown charrette, the alley cats thing that Joe led, all of that was also a thing off of the H2O20, that visioning process, right? And from 2016 until today, I mean, there's hardly any vacant buildings downtown. I don't think by moving the Watertown Community Center or whatever it is to a different location does anything to diminish the community's commitment and the city's commitment in downtown. The vibe downtown has primarily been driven by development company, the city themselves, and private investment, right? I mean, through the TIFs that were granted, I mean, thank God that the council and the governing body at the time agreed to do those TIFs because a lot of these multi-purpose buildings that are down here, these multi-use buildings, most likely wouldn't be here. We're talking about 2 50 to 80-year-old buildings. Obviously new construction, like, you know, they touched on in the slideshow presentation. I mean, you've got gained efficiencies, whether it's utility costs or minimizing repair costs. I mean, you're basically going to mitigate any potential long-term repair costs that you would get by having these two, or by having a new facility. He spoke about the ramifications of COVID as it relates to construction costs. Between 2016 and 2022, construction costs, raw material costs for the exact same material went up 30 to 40%, right, in that 9-year period. So that has since plateaued. So I think that you know, you'd be looking at construction numbers while there's still a moving target that's there. You know, the things that I've read and the things that I've talked about through the National Association of Realtors and other entities, national home builders, I mean, they're saying that a lot of that stuff is going to plateau. But the other dynamic change is that you look at how people have changed how they work, right? I mean, nationally, there is a great concern for commercial lease space office buildings because they're going to become vacant and which is eventually going to change tax rolls and how taxes are done because people are working virtually. And that hasn't changed. That hasn't come back. There's plenty of information on that that are out there. And I think that the gain efficiencies, I think, which is one of the things that I took out of the presentation, I think is just going to be a catalyst for more positive things to come through our city, just through, like you said, you got everybody under one roof or break room or collaboration and things like that. You're not driving back and forth. By being able to put heavy equipment in a storage facility, I mean, just the hoses alone on commercial excavators and snow removals and things like that. I mean, all of that maintenance costs, those repair costs, would be minimized too. I mean, not to the tune of 30 million, but.
Nobody's saying we shouldn't have a street.
Right, so, but I think, I don't think the message is that Watertown is abandoned in downtown. I don't think that is. I mean, I think that Watertown, the city has done a great job of reinvesting in itself. I mean, you look at the quality of life stuff, the multi-purpose facility, the new softball complex. I mean, when I give tours to new individuals looking to relocate to this community, they want to know, what is the city investing in, right? What has the city done? Not just private equity. And these are the types of things that makes it easy for me and most likely for community developers to get more business and industry in here, because the city is making those commitments and those investments in itself. And I don't think the message by moving it to Highway 20 to this location, which I think they got a great buy on. I think the Wells Fargo was a great buy on. That's why I asked if they had to do an appraisal on it, because I think that they could sell it for more than that. I don't think that is the message that most people will receive based on the investment that the community has done the last 4 or 5.
Glenn.
I guess I would say as a member of the council that we have no intention of changing what we have been doing in years as far as supporting the downtown. What Amanda referenced as far as working with developers, the organizations that we support. We have no intention of deviating from that course of action, because we have definitely seen the results of that and the benefits that have come to the community because of that. And keep in mind that we're not talking about taking Wells Fargo and the existing city hall and leveling it and making a parking lot out of it, because we're hoping, because we've had communications with people that do want to come in there and make an ongoing viable business that will add to the downtown. So please don't get the message that we're any way, shape or form changing our approach as far as supporting the downtown, because that is the last thing we want to accomplish, or the last thing that we plan to do.
Go ahead. I didn't
My
catch your
question-
name. I'm sorry.
John.
John.
My question was that if we move all of the downtown facilities out there, there's a lot of people that live in the downtown area that don't have access to automobiles, and they have to do the walking and stuff. So they would end up having to take the transit or take something or a cab or whatever to go out there if they don't have access to transportation. And some of them, I'm not saying, the people that don't have a lot of money don't have a way to get out there to go to the city hall and do their business. And, I know that the Wells Fargo building needs, quite a bit of work, and, the cost justification on it. I don't know how long it would take to justify that, the improvements to it would pay off. But, there's a lot of people downtown. You said they did a survey on that, and there was only 30 people that came in. And, but we've gone down there to the current one to vote. And my wife is semi-handicapped, and boy, to get up there to vote was a chore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the most accessible building.
No,
That's
no.
for sure. Yeah.
I agree that you have to be out of there. I worked in there in the 60s when I had a paper route.
Yeah, I agree.
It's back ways.
Yeah. So, no, those are great comments. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think there's some people in the back first, but I don't.
Okay.
know, so-
Don.
Actually, before.
Oh, well, okay.
Can I interrupt? I just want to address something that Nancy said. More than anything, I think what I want people to get from me as mayor is I don't care as much about buildings as I care about the attitude in the town. So I can definitely see if someone was in that room and they didn't want to tell their true feelings because maybe they felt intimidated, but I could also see that someone might be intimidated if you came and talked to them straight up. And they might want to tell you what they want to hear. So obviously they're not telling one of us their true feelings. So I would encourage them. Look, if they're comfortable, if you want to tell me who was in that room who disagreed, I would be glad to talk with them. I'm glad to talk with anyone because more than anything, I don't want this decision being made by gossip in coffee groups or on Facebook. It's going to be an open discussion in the public for the city. That's the attitude I want to bring. Because in the end, we can disagree upon a project, but hopefully we can agree upon loving Watertown.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And I don't think this has to become divisive. And frankly, and I don't think that the city has done a bad job of investing. But we're talking about, you know, are we gonna have an $8 million city services center downtown, or are we gonna have an $8 million city services center out on Highway 20? And so there's just no way you can say, oh, we'll put it on Highway 20 and you haven't in any way not furthered your investment in downtown. That's obvious. But I think that, you know, I think it's important that everybody just stay real positive. But what you folks, you know, you're clearly invested in this and it is coming across. And I mean, you know, Amanda wants to push back when I say something. So there already is a division, and I understand that's your agenda. And I gather the two council members that aren't here maybe disagree, and that's why they're not here. I don't know.
They're on vacation.
But-
That's why they're not here.
Okay. Anyway, I guess, you know, all I'm saying is cheapest is not always the best. You're talking about apparently by your estimates, a little less than $1 million difference. And I'm just urging you to think about that $1 million might be a very small price to pay to have a very nice facility in a building that downtown that has been vacant now for many years and would be a very dignified place for the gravitas of a local government center. And apparently, I think if I read one of those slides right, I think you were estimating only $500,000 for the sale of those 12 acres. Well, heck, that might be $1.5 million low on the estimate. So there's your $1 million right there. I just think that you can't overlook the non-financial value of continued commitment to downtown.
John,
Go ahead.
I'm Don Roby, resident of Ward E. I also want to thank all of you for the efforts you put in, not just the presentation, but other things too. It's very much appreciated. My comments, really, a lot of them have been mentioned, but they revolve around a couple of things. A lot of it has to do with H2020 visioning process. That was a very, very successful moment of time and stretch of time for our community. And a lot of that was downtown related. Those of you up here in the city of Fields and such that I've talked to, you know, I have a bias towards downtown, whether it's Wells Fargo or some other place. Driven by a couple of things. One is we have had a tremendous amount of investment. The city has greatly supported downtown. Private investment has supported downtown. And we can tick off a whole list of things that have happened up to the new downtown park. I can go back to storefront issue, the Goss Opera House, the Alleys project, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had a great amount of success downtown. I can't help but feel a little bit that if we move City Hall out of downtown, we might lose a little momentum. I know you can argue that both ways, but I kind of feel that way because my heart is downtown. So my bias has always been to be downtown. Second thing I would mention is the very building we're standing in was originally going to be moved down to Willow Creek Drive. And I think the community said, we'd like to have that downtown. And the people, I haven't taken any surveys, but I think most people say, we're glad our police department's downtown. So I think you've got two viable options here, but instead of going that route, I'm not going to hold my breath and stop my feet. I just think that the heart of the downtown is you compare it to other cities, and especially when they're doing H2O, it drove us nuts. Everybody compares to Brookings all the time. It's such a great downtown. It just drove us all crazy. And I think right now we're neck and neck, if not ahead of Brookings right now, because of all that's happened in the last 10, 12 years. If we move City Hall up to Highway 20, is that going to change? Maybe not. Maybe not. But my bias, let's just leave it at that. My bias is that we had a City Hall. Thank you.
But
Just to kind of touch on both those points, one of the things that was mentioned earlier, Amanda, you said that, you know, City Hall is the heart of city operations, which I think we probably all fully agree with. The new location may be the geographical center of the city limits, but a large portion of the western portion of that is a lake. So when I look at that map and you look at the population density, downtown is the geographical center of the population density. And it's also the heart of almost every community. one of the things that Nancy said, I bought Shirts Lumber in 2007 and I leased a building for 10 years. And from 2007 to 2012, occupancy downtown was maybe 30%. There were a ton of buildings empty. And I think we've all worked, as us business owners, City Hall, WDC, we've all worked to revitalize downtown. And Mr. Buffalo, I know that you have an ongoing commitment as the council to downtown. One of the things I'm afraid of as a dual business owning citizen downtown and a building owner downtown is that when City Hall and the heart of city governance moves out of downtown, it's kind of easy to lose focus. When you guys have to come down to City Hall every day, the employees every day, council members, when you come down there, you're kind of forced to park downtown and walk down Maple or walk down Second Street. And there might be a lot of people who don't come downtown other than that specific function. And then I heard you on the radio the other day, and again, you mentioned it this morning, that you kind of did an informal look at the amount of foot traffic you had over the last 2 weeks. And I think we'd all agree that yes, foot traffic probably is less now than it has been in the past because everything can be done online. But I don't know that an informal look at foot traffic over the last 2 weeks is maybe the right timeline to do that because, we've had snow virtually every 3 days. And a lot of businesses downtown are slow because people aren't leaving their houses right now. That might have something to do with that foot traffic. Beautification of Highway 20, I think, is a wonderful idea. I think the street facility itself will help do that. But I moved here in 2002 from Colorado. And I've been up and down Highway 20. I've been up and down Highway 81. I've been up and down 212. Highway 20 is primarily zoned industrial. And you can beautify an area of town as much as you want, as long as everything else around it agrees to beautify. But this facility sitting out at the old sale barn thing is going to be a really new, bright, shiny object, which it looks fantastic. But if nothing else along that stretch of Highway 20 does anything to improve their footprint, it's like having the nicest house in a crappy neighborhood, to be honest with you. So again, like you mentioned, if this ends up going to Highway 20, I'm not gonna stop my feet, I'm not gonna holler. I would love to see it stay downtown. I think the workflow, having everybody under one roof, in theory, it sounds great, but as we also just discussed, everybody can work remotely now. So I think that communications interdepartmental from two different facilities is still definitely a viable option. So my opinion, again, for what it's worth, is to stay downtown. I think the optics, I don't think that by leaving downtown, any city employee or council member is giving up on downtown, but I think the optics of it speak differently. And like Nancy said, about an $850,000 to $900,000 difference, you're looking at less than 3% on the total cost. And so, like Nancy said, cheaper maybe isn't always the best thing. So, last thing I want to mention on that is, Mayor, you talked how you don't want this to be discussed in coffee groups on Facebook or whatever. Because I'm sure that I don't speak out a lot on stuff. I just kind of keep myself to my own thing. The reason I'm here tonight to speak out on this is because I think it's important to get the viewpoint of the building and business owners downtown, even more so than the community writ large. Because I tell you right now, if this went to a community discussion, it's going to be, why are we doing anything? Fix the potholes.
You've been on Facebook recently, haven't you?
So the community's not going to care one way or the other for the most part, I don't think, because they're going to complain about bad streets and potholes and why they get plows at 3 in the morning instead of 3:45 in the morning, and why is there a big ridge of snow in the bottom of my driveway? Because they don't take the time to come to meetings like this and discuss it. So I think it's really important to get that information from people that I'm downtown more than I am at my house. I'd like to be all state. That's it.
No,
Yeah, I'd like to just voice support for keeping the city hall building downtown. As you know, I'm kind of associated with the Gas Opera House. And,
Just a little.
and, you know, that was closed and just like the rest of town, a lot of things were shuttered. And there was a whole group of people in the community came together, led by the Watertown Development Company and the Watertown Area Foundation. Some other, you know, lots of people down Roby. And it got a whole bunch of people to invest, you know, $5 million in that facility. And I think it helped start the revitalization of downtown. And I think that is what needed to happen in this community. And I think there is an optics issue if you move out of downtown. Watertown Development Company is still here in downtown. Watertown Area Community Foundation is still here in downtown. I'd hate to see you move out there. And a lot of things that Nancy said, what happened to downtowns with people moving to the outside and then the downtown's decline. And will it kill us? No, I'm with Don and the other gentleman here, you know, it'll be all right, but I think we should really consider leaving it downtown.
You already spoke once, so you gotta wait.
Sounds good.
Optics is the word, like, that's, I think, really key. The momentum is downtown. You gotta wonder, why are we gonna go fight momentum and move out? This council has the same decision that the council had when they decided to keep the police department downtown. And they kept the fire station downtown. What was the reason for that? I think is the same one now. The heart of the city is in downtown. And part of the charrette was we changed the name from uptown to get back to downtown. And that was one of the best things that came of it. And when I got back home, and we heard it all the time at the paper about the need for a new city hall. I don't care how many times we wrote an editorial saying there's way too many other projects that are more important. Well, now, Amanda, you're right. It's time. It's been on the list for a long time. But I was so excited when I read about the purchase of the Wells Fargo building. It just solved for me the biggest issue of leaving downtown was always the undercurrent. And I think the optics of that, especially given the momentum, especially given all the investments on the part of the city and private developers, I think the council is going to miss a huge opportunity to not further the optics of downtown's place to be. And I can't see moving it out of downtown for $500,000 or $1 million. I think there's some things that can be done with the plan. But the Wells Fargo is a stately building. It's a great location. So I highly encourage in the optics to stay downtown.
Liam.
I want to preface my comments by saying I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of the city staff. I mean, I have pleasure working with you guys quite a bit and the elected people. I noticed like to sit up there. Literally, we just had a real fun one across the street. Just moments ago. You're my favorite person in this room right now. So I really appreciate everything you guys have done. I just want to talk about a few things. It's easy for me to be negative. I live in a world of vitriol and fighting all the time. I'm trying to be positive. This is an opportunity. I view this as an opportunity to further our commitment to downtown, to beautify, to continue to beautify our downtown. To continue to do that. We talked about Pier. I did the same research that you did, Mayor. If you look at all the other cities in Watertown, Brookings, or in South Dakota, excuse me, Brookings, City Hall downtown, Aberdeen, it's downtown, Sioux Falls is downtown, Rapid City is downtown. You go to places like Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, lovely place. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure. It's right on Pearl Street, a gorgeous campus, right on Pearl Street, right literally in the very geometric center of Pearl Street. And it's really it's a focal point in the community. I understand there might not be a lot of actual business. The 60 or so people that were in the room today might disagree with that. They might disagree with anything, I guess, as we roll through. Additionally, you've got your PD down here with your police chief. So one of your department heads down here. You've got your fire department, fire chief right there. Additionally, there's something intangible about community. Kyle brought it up. We have become an incredibly individualistic society, Americans generally, and it's kind of scary in some regards. We retreat to our homes. we retreat to our Zoom meetings. Sometimes we don't interact with folks. The difference in the actual community coming together, the unity exists in a small part in our downtown. And I think the risk growing that or taking away from that, we can talk about putting it in a quasi-industrial area. It seems a little bit odd to me, but I want to remain positive. But I would urge us philosophically to continue to build our community. And part of that is proximity. It's here. It's with where the people and folks are, not on a private one. Thank you.
Kind of a different take on the Penn conversation. And I get it. I think you've done a nice job. Like we're happy to drop the options and kind of spelling out what would happen. I think the street department and city services are an odd combination in the sense of living together, of putting those two together. You talked about putting a really nice building. And I think all the things that we're looking at, we're putting at the street department, which is very much needed. You're still gonna have trucks and sand and dirt and, you can put a nice city hall in front of that, but the two combination, I still think are kind of odd. I get it, that the last two left that need to be renovated. I do have one concern, and that would be kind of safety concern. Again, we're moving trucks, we're moving equipment. I know we got the public kind of going in and out. I'm sure you guys have thought about how that's gonna look, but I mean, that would be an additional concern that I would have. Again, bringing those two things together, that would just be one of the things that I'd like to see it stay downtown. If you end up owning it, I would be somewhat concerned and like to make sure that they're going out on the curb somehow. And if I'm coming in and a kid runs away from me or something, they're not gonna be, I'm not gonna problem. Something
Speak to those, because those are considerations that we have discussed and thought through a little bit. Everything is conceptual at this point, but the curb, especially, we have talked to the DOT about access there on Highway 20, which they're open to and fine with. It may require reduced speed. It may require a signal. Some point we don't have those details yet. What we would likely do is the general public would access the facility on 10th Avenue, and city staff, trucks, equipment would access it from the south. So you wouldn't have people coming in and out of the same area. Those are good points. Thank you. Okay, you can talk now.
Just a couple points and then go. A couple things. I totally agree with what Milt said. Obviously Milt's heavily invested. The GOS is an anchor for downtown, which spurred development, right? So it reinvigorated the investment in downtown. You couple that with H2O20 and the Sheridan 16. What happened? It grew, right? It blew up downtown. To Paul's point, right? You got 30% vacancy rate or 30% occupancy rate. What is it now? Probably 90 something, right? And then, but look at two other things, right? So you talk about putting a shiny new building in an industrial area. Well, that's how you expand and grow communities, right? When they put the 1963 or 4, when they built the Watertown High School, it was out on the edge of town. Everybody freaked out because, well, why are you building it out there? Now look at where it's at, right? So kind of the center of downtown. The similar conversation could be had. The reason that downtown was vacated was because the malls were the craze, right? Malls, everything was mall. Now what? You could blow up the mall, and they probably should put the jail in there because it's a big block building and it's thin, and you could just let them run amok out in the back parking lot. Nobody can be otherwise. But that's neither here nor there. You do an investment like this in this area of town, much like the Walmart development, right? Walmart went in, there was nothing there. And now you've got a bunch of other stuff that's grown up, popped up, and been out and around there, including business and other industry that's out there. The Redland Center, right? Obviously a big beacon on the top of the hill that you can see from the interstate. Terex is another one, right? So Terex's expansion and commitment to the community. spurred a brand new development park that went in there and an industrial park that's in there. So, you know, that's the other thing to look at or that I certainly look at and people that do development and things like that. I'm sure the development company would say the same thing. You build something like this here and then eventually the stuff that's around is going to grow and improve as well.
I got something to add on that too.
Okay.
Just super brief. And I'm Sean. I've been here for 23 years. Well, a little bit. I've been 37 technically. Sorry, I'm very good at talking. I love downtown. I love Watertown. I've been here most of my entire life. You know, I mean, been part of the family business for 23 years. And I remember, you know, there was a car battery place across from the pub that we used to go and throw the old car batteries up. And when it was a meat locker, I believe too. And I'd seen downtown when it was 20 years ago, it wasn't very good. 10 years ago, it got a lot better, and 5 years ago to now, it's been crazy good. I mean, the Goss expansion, when they got that going and got it running, it Kyle said it really sparked the development and started seeing a lot of this big downtown boom. And it's amazing to see all this wonderful development, all these new things coming to our downtown and really making it revitalized and wonderful. With the city hall, if it moved, it wouldn't bug me at all. And the only reason I don't think it really bugged me is because I'd be more excited about it to see what private investment would do to that area. I would love to see, if they knocked down the Wells Fargo building, I would fight them because that building is beautiful. But I'm just curious what they would do, what they would see, and how that would kind of continue to grow the vision of what downtown I believe it should be. I mean, if I wasn't a business owner, I'd be at City Hall maybe a dozen times a year, maybe not even that many, to grab permits to do voting and all of that. And I think if it went over by Highway 20 and kind of maybe it kick off its own, not just beautification of the area, but that own growth over there, but it would also be just, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, it's gonna get worse. But thank you for having this presentation and for all the work that the city and the city council and everyone has done by just being here and coming together with a good dialogue.
Sean, maybe one deciding factor is, would you deliver to Highway 20?
Right, right, right. All right.
H1 delivers anywhere.
Go ahead.
I think I would echo Chris' comment that it's a weird combination for me and I can't wrap my head around it. For the amount of dollars going into it, you want City Hall to be stately. You want to be a place that you're proud of. Like, this is where we're doing business and then there's gonna be steel sheds. And I love the street department and I love all the buildings and I love all the heavy equipment. But I don't know if that's the backdrop that you want for City Hall. So I'm having some issues just with that. Historically, even when I have young engineers, I tell them when they go to a community, go downtown because that's where City Hall is, which, you know, I'm all about doing something different if it necessarily fits. I would caution with the current bidding climate because while they are two very good alternatives. One is way more vetted than the other. And I get that with remodels, it's inherently a little bit more expensive for what you're doing, but you've solicited bids, you've gone through value engineering. The Highway 20 option, while it is vetted, there are still some more details to figure out. So that $1 million cost could be a little bit different.
I can speak just a little bit and Keith can probably add to, so combined operations, that actually is not uncommon in communities across the country. Sometimes you see city halls attached to a fire station. Sometimes you see them, say that again?
Growing communities, like over 25,000.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where they're located and what their situation is. I actually saw that quite a bit in my time in Iowa. But what you're seeing in general is consolidation of services because you provide the efficiencies that are gained in the way that you can provide services to the community are inherently better when you can have people together. And so that's, that's the thought behind it. And if we go back, actually way back, the first, kind of hard copy rendition. Now, this city hall option doesn't include, the storage buildings and shop buildings, but it included admin space for all, for street staff. So it's not a new concept. And it also included heated storage for, city vehicles. So it's not entirely new. And from an operational perspective, as the person who's responsible for managing the operations, it makes a lot of sense to me. Doesn't mean it's what we have to do, but it certainly checks a lot of boxes on how we're working together as an organization. So.
Yeah, I think if I could chime in on that too. From a public works standpoint, and I'm glad you pulled this up because it relates to this too. I don't think a lot of people, you hear public works, like, oh, that's great. Well, what is that? And, but it includes a lot of things, public works does. And in Watertown, it's 6 particular divisions, streets being one of them. Streets correlates heavily with engineering, which is another division, and community development, building community development review process. They've got wastewater, solid waste, and airport. All 6 of those divisions make up public works. And so we look at a functionality standpoint from workflow, from Amanda being my boss to me being Rob's boss to all that connectivity of those public works divisions. Even back in 2016, when we didn't have a public works department and those divisions were their own department, the mayor had slotted offices here for the airport manager, the wastewater superintendent, the street superintendent, and the, at the time, I think our Upper Big Sioux watershed manager was going in there as well. And then over here, we had the city engineer and then the building official, which is now the community development manager. So all the public works managers had spaces in this concept. And that's just one department. Public works is just one department of the city. It's got a lot of functions too. So trying to get those economies of scale and those functionalities brought together all the more into one facility is where some of this really started to make sense. Now, Amanda cited earlier, 3 of those divisions we're not gonna move them into City Hall. We just built the new wastewater admin building where the wastewater superintendent's housed with his staff. We have the landfill where it's at, we're not moving that. And we have the airport where it is. It too is not moving. So those 3 divisions will remain where they're at, but I just want to explain that from a public works management standpoint, because I think people hear public works a lot. And again, I don't think they always fully understand what that includes, what that entails. And the overlapping functionality between each of those divisions that is so critical and happens on a daily basis, not even weekly or monthly, but a daily basis. Those divisions are interacting.
Okay, we have one more question. I asked that, I know that a lot of people are looking, it's been 2 hours of your time that you've given us. I appreciate that. We can stick around. You know where to get a hold of us. I thank you for your time. I have one more question. We'll take that.
On that 2016 proposal where everybody was housed under the same thing in the snow pool, right? Based on the assumption of that at that point in time, where would the rest of the street department have been? In its current location, or would that still have been a capital improvement project later on? That makes sense.
I'm guessing the latter.
Okay, so I guess in theory, why couldn't that still exist if the facility was downtown, where the street facility is where all of the equipment and all of the stuff happens? But if we're looking at 2016 and housing all of the public works staff kind of under one roof, couldn't that still be done now?
There are space constraints with the Wells Fargo building for that scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just back to the Wells Fargo thing, just real quick. I know it's a 50-year-old building, as you discussed a little bit. But when you were talking about like the HVAC and some of that stuff, did anybody ever go in and look at that to see if there have been updates? Because I find it hard to believe that the HVAC system in the Wells Fargo building is 50 years old.
Some of it is original. There are parts of it that have been updated and replaced, but there is a significant portion of it that is original to the building. And to Heath's point, it works fine. It works fine now. I have some PTSD specifically about HVAC, so I have some unique experience with banks being renovated into city halls. This is the exact project we did in my previous community. It is a beautiful, beautiful facility, very cool architecture. We moved in March of 20. The world ended, so we shut everything down. Same scenario. We kept the HVAC, the people who maintained it, everything's great. We had all the records. In June of 20, all 4 rooftop units went out at the same time. So you just can't, and that might not happen here, but you also, it might happen when you have aged systems. And we can deal with that if this is the decision that we go with. We just have to be prepared for it. That's a $800 to $1 million cost that we need to be thinking about long term. That's the only point in bringing that up.
You're talking to a room full of old building experts.
Yeah.
Surprise, classic.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll tell you what, that was the worst day, maybe not the worst, but one of the worst days in my city management career. Like, I have to go tell the council that we just moved into this brand new building. So,
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. If anyone has a question or comment that has to be heard by the entire room, we can do that. But if it's just something that you're curious about, we will stick around. You can ask us afterwards, okay? And Councilman Paulson, is it something for the whole room?
Yes.
Okay.
First, I want to thank all of you for being here. Obviously, your opinions matter. We represent you. We were elected to be your voice in these votes. So we're trying to take personal thoughts out of this and listen to each and every one of you. And that's why we had the meeting with the other owners just the other day. On Tuesday, had a work session on this, but Kyle hit on the development portion. The ice arena is spurring another new development. I'm on the phone every single day with developers that looking at different things here and there. And one of them called me today because he had heard rumors on the city hall and stuff. He had seen the discussions. And he talked to me for a long time. I mean, it was almost an hour just on the city hall discussion and this and his group has been part of many downtown revitalization groups. And he has seen city halls move away from that area for the revitalization process. And so I was kind of asking those questions of what that looked like, why it was happening. And a lot of them weren't, I would say actually probably none of them were to the point where our downtown is right now. So it's not apples to apples. I agree 100% because we do have a great downtown and that's thanks to all of you spending your time and effort down there. But he spoke very highly of this decision. And yes, it's a developer. A lot of people look down on developers, but specifically this area and what it could potentially bring to the downtown area. And that's not trying to sway anyone's vote. That's just, he had a very unique vision for this half block. And it was interesting to hear that side of it, that something I really haven't heard before. And that's my question, I guess, is it, I'm trying to struggle with my own head, is it worth the tax roll and the extra that it's going to bring, the extra business, the extra what they kind of had envisioned, or is it City Hall being down there? Because we don't, the last thing we want is the optic that we're abandoning anyone in the city, because that's not us. That's not what we're here to do. And we try to make decisions to make sure that doesn't happen. So I just want to point that out, that these developers are constantly talking, and not only in the ice arena, but they're looking at this downtown area, looking at the next step, the next opportunity. And I think we're at a unique spot. And I would offer to sit down and talk to any of you, because I do want to hear more of your thoughts before we end up making a decision here.
Councilman Tupper?
I'll be a lot more brief than Alan just was. So. I look at it this way. We've spent countless dollars, countless hours. I mean, Nancy, we were on the urban renewal board together. I went through the charrette and I wasn't real involved in the 2020, but I kept track of it. That helped revitalize downtown. We worked a lot on revitalizing downtown. There were some things that we worked on that we didn't quite get accomplished that happened afterwards, like turning the streets back to two-way streets. That was huge for downtown. I still believe that. I don't think the city's given up on downtown. What's wrong with the city trying to help revitalize another part of town? We should be responsible for the whole community, not just downtown. And I think we are. I think we do a good job of that. Been a lot of time and effort put into this. It's not an easy decision. I just came over from City Hall with him and listened to a lot of those decisions that are going to come to council, but what's that?
I said have fun with those.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. But I don't think anybody's, I think it might be a great idea to try to help revitalize that part of town. And it's definitely going to be beautify that part of town. It's not a very good looking situation when you come in. And to people that thought it doesn't belong with the street department building because it just won't look great, take time to drive out to our wastewater treatment plant. Brand new administration building. It belongs there. You know, if you look at the back, look behind there, you know, who would ever thought that a beautiful building like that would be a pride of the city at a wastewater treatment facility. And I think this can be the same thing.
All right, thank you. 2 takeaways for tonight. Thank you all for being here. And everyone loves Rob. So. Good job, Rob. Wait, please, just respect the end of the meeting. So I mean, because I wanted to finish it before, because otherwise we're gonna lose, we were already losing so many stragglers. Any future council item read ahead? Seeing none, no. Public comments, anyone would like to speak to something not on the agenda? I don't see anyone. There's no reason to go into executive session.
We've heard you loud and clear. Heard you loud and clear.
Comments due. No reason to go into executive session. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shuddy. Any discussion on that? During none, motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Kyle,
Thank you.
are you still serving food?